Welcome to Guided by Third Wheel, the podcast. My name is Amber Ireland, and I'm here with my co-host, Jill Bucaro. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Guided by Third Wheel. Today I am excited because we are recording our first ever podcast with a guest. So I think we mentioned a podcast or two ago that we were going to start bringing guests on. We thought maybe people were a little bit sick of hearing Amber and I talking about peeling back the onion, taking our oars up out of the water, floating down the river, etc., etc. We wanted to mix it up a little bit. So we do have a lineup of some really cool people coming on. And the first person that's on with us today is a very good friend of mine named Kate Smith. Kate has many talents and jobs and such a cool history and journey, and she'll share a little bit of that as we move through the podcast. But one thing that she is an Enneagram expert. Now, she's going to scoff. She is right now when I call her an expert, but she knows the Enneagram. And I don't know about you guys, I love a good personality test. Amber, do you love a personality test? I do.
Love to categorize myself.
Yes. I love like a Cosmo quiz. I like to learn more about myself. And at least for me, Enneagram has been one of the most revealing of the personality tests that I've done. It's really helped me in my journey. And I know it's been huge in Kate's life to the point that she uses her knowledge of the Enneagram as a gift to talk to people about and uses in her work and in her practice. Without further ado, introduce yourself and just take us through the numbers. What is the Enneagram? What are the 9 numbers? How do we start to think about what our number might be, characteristics, all that good stuff?
Yeah, sounds good. So my name's Kate, and it's an honor to be here. I've been listening to you guys since day one.
Aww.
So really appreciate all the wisdom and insight that you guys share and the vulnerability that you have. And while I'm not a social worker, I am in a helping justice profession. So I've just found this podcast to be a true gift to me. So thank you for having me on. I first learned about the Enneagram back in 2017 at a conference that I was part of, and I kept calling it the Enneagrams. So if you are someone who doesn't exactly know how to pronounce it, that's okay. There is room to grow and understand it. But the Enneagram is Greek, so you break it down. So Ennea is 9, and then gramma meaning diagram. So what it is, it's a literal diagram of 9 points with a circle, and the 9 numbers are placed around it. And so inside the circle, there's lines connecting to the numbers, which are really important too. And they represent how each of the types can grow and move, and that you're connected. It's not just one number, but you're intricately connected to all of the numbers. And so each of those numbers represents a core personality type. Okay. So it's not just based on behavior. That's what I think makes it different from Myers-Briggs or StrengthsFinder, but it's rooted in the core motivations and core fears, which then in turn creates this deeply ingrained patterns we develop to survive or hopefully succeed. So how I like to think about Enneagram is like it's a house. And there's 9 rooms, and each room represents the 9 different types and a different way of seeing and responding to the world. And you can travel throughout the different rooms and appreciate different parts about the room, maybe not like some other parts about the room, but there's one room that will really feel like home for you.
Interesting.
Okay.
I said I wasn't going to interrupt, but I have a question now already with that. What do the people that created the Enneagram say? Is this something that we're born with? Is this a personality type? Or do we think that sometimes our Enneagrams are shaped by our early experiences?
Yeah, they definitely say that your Enneagram type is shaped by your early experiences. So you shouldn't type when you're kids, but when you're a little bit older. But it's saying, what is that childhood message that you received and how you respond to that and live throughout the world. So there's one room or one type where you just feel most at home, most familiar with, most comfortable. Not because it might be your favorite or the coziest, but because it's where your personality developed a base camp. The great thing about the Enneagram, which I think is different than the other personality tools, is it doesn't just lock you in your room, right? This isn't a prison.
You can leave.
You can leave. It is, you get the map of the whole house, and you can visit other rooms, and you can appreciate the view from someone else's window.
Yes, I like that.
So, and the more you become aware of the patterns of your own homeroom, the more freedom you gain to explore other rooms and not be stuck in it. That is where I feel like the growth happens. That's where the transformation happens. And understanding and discovering my number, it helped me understand I don't have to just react anymore how I normally do. I can respond in a different way.
Oh, I like that. The responding versus the reacting,
Yeah.
right? That there's just a little bit more groundedness and clarity with that.
Totally. If this is interesting to you and you're like, I want to know what my number is. People do it lots of different ways, but what I found the most helpful is to figure out where your triad or center is. They group 3 numbers each, so 3 groups of 3 based on where they most instinctively experience the world. You experience the world through thinking or your head, that's one center, and that's numbers 5, 6, and 7. And then there's the feeling, that's with your heart, is a heart center, and that's 2, 3, and 4. And then the doing center, which is your body, and that's 8, 9, and 1. Okay. So in figuring those out, each of them responds to it in different ways. But figuring out if you were driven by your head, your heart, or your body, or that idea that you break it down further of fear, shame, and anger. For the gut or the body triad, your core emotion is anger, and that's 8, 9, and 1. They relate to the world through instinct and action and physical presence. We'll start with 8 first. So 8s express anger outwardly. I think of it as they're always bubbling like a hot water, a rolling boil, and sometimes they'll spill out.
Right, but you could potentially look at an 8 and be able to clock that.
100%.
Okay.
Yes. But then the 9s are interesting because they suppress their anger. They fall asleep to their anger. Like they would say, oh, I'm not angry. I'm not angry.
Okay.
But they'll be passive about it, or they just won't do it. And 9s don't do things they don't want to do.
But they're not going to come at you and be like, I don't want to do this.
No.
They're just not going to do it.
They're just not going to do it. They'll be like, okay. Type 1s internalize their anger. Their anger is not outward like the 8s. They internalize it because it shows up as resentment or frustration when things aren't right. We'll talk about the 1s a little bit more, but people always think they're really critical, and they are, but they're most critical of and angry towards themselves, not other people.
Interesting.
Let's go back to the body, mind, and heart. What are some examples of someone who would experience the world through their body?
So if you feel like your body is reacting first, if you're tightening or you're bracing or you're resisting, that is where you're saying you can feel things very deeply in your body.
Okay. What about your heart?
The heart is thinking, am I enough?
Okay.
Am I lovable?
Well, there I am.
There we are. Amber and I are like,
I was beginning to think maybe I was a body.
I saw you.
for a
I saw you
second.
getting excited that
I
you
was
maybe.
like, maybe I am not.
Right.
Nope, you're shame. You're shame.
And the
Okay,
hearts,
thank you.
the hearts and the
Ring
shame
the bell, shame.
is how you're very attuned to how others perceive you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep, that's
We're
me.
back.
So if anybody's thinking that they are identifying with, so we talked about the body, the heart, what about the mind?
Yeah, so the mind is always running,
Okay.
right? Always strategizing, always scanning for threats. You prioritize safety and certainty.
And that makes sense because the core motivator there is fear, right?
Totally.
So
Yes.
it's constantly just trying to overcome
I feel
that.
like I sit between those two, though.
With the lines that we were talking about, when you go into stress and when you go into health, you likely
Okay.
move to a different center.
Got you.
Hopefully people are starting to think, okay, am I heart, am I mind, am I body? And to me, I always think about when I completely lose control, when I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been hijacked. And the thing that always hijacks me is shame. Anger never hijacks me. Fear never really hijacks me. And so I think about that core motivator. So hit it for us one more time, Katie. So 8s are internalizing that in.
Yep.
You're going to be able to clock an 8,
Yep.
easy breezy. 9s literally don't even know
I'm
they're
not angry. No, they don't even know they're angry.
Right.
Yes. They would be like, I'm the least angry person I know.
And I do feel like people who don't know their types are often 9s.
Yes.
Would you say that's true?
Yes, which we could talk about 9s a little bit later, but yes, 9s definitely see that all perspectives.
Yes.
I'm like, that makes sense.
And then 1s are often taking that anger in a more critical space, often you said towards themselves too.
Towards themselves, and when it is internalized, it becomes resentment and frustration towards others. But again, it's internalized because frustration, resentment is more, I'm just upset that I can't do what you're doing.
Right.
So it's internalized.
Right. Okay.
Interesting.
So then do you want to do the shame of how they experience it? This might
We're
hit
ready.
close to home.
Ready.
The shame twins are ready for this one.
So these types are attuned to image, relationships, and emotional connection. And so they often struggle with questions of worthiness and identity, and they are so shaped by how others see them, right? So twos, they try to overcome shame by earning love and being indispensable.
Yep, there I am.
Yes.
Da-da-da!
Yes. So again, they try to overcome it, but they're actively resisting it. And then threes avoid shame by performing and achieving to gain admiration.
I do that too.
Yeah.
It's true. And then the fours lean into shame. They are like the eights of the shame. They're like, give me all the shame. They want to feel different. They want to feel flawed. They just feel so misunderstood. And why can't anyone see me for who I really am?
That's so interesting. I like that the fours are the eights
Yes.
of the shame. And I'm a 4. In my professional life, I think I'm more of a 3. I love the external feedback. I love to be able to achieve, because in that achievement, you can escape the shame a little bit. For a moment, I am good enough. I don't have to worry about that. But then, of course, we're back. And then, twos. In the social work field, I see a lot of 2s. I see a lot of 3s. I see a lot of 8s and some 1s.
1s, yeah.
So if you're a social worky lady that listens to this podcast, I would think about those numbers.
Yes.
Anyway.
Fear is the last core triad. And so these are types 5, 6, and 7. And they engage the world with ideas, analysis, and anticipating about what might go wrong. And they're trying to keep one step ahead of it. But they do it in different ways. They often struggle with anxiety and seek security. The 5s manage fear by withdrawing, observing, and then hoarding knowledge. You might not see them when they are in a state of fear, because they are trying to get all the information to be able to come back and present. This is how I'm going to get out of it.
Yeah, I know some folks like that.
Yeah. Very analytical. And so the 6s are similar in this way, because they manage fear by scanning for danger and relying on loyalty and support. And they always want to be prepared.
Yeah.
So they're already thinking through all the things that can go wrong, and then they're trying to fix it before that ever happens.
I do that a little bit, but that is not my go-to, because I could give a shit about analytics. I don't want to analyze anything. I don't need a plan. Like, I'll make it work.
Totally. Yes, and then the 7s, they are the opposites then too, because they avoid fear by staying busy, upbeat, and planning for fun or escape. So if they're in a bad situation, they will do whatever they can to Houdini out of it. And it's good. And that's the great thing about the Enneagram, is you want to have compassion for the other numbers and how you say, oh, I'm similar to you in this way.
Right.
And it's a point of connection that you get to have with the people that you get to interact with. Or if it's showing up a way that you're like, oh, that's the same, and I don't like that about me, so I'm going to get frustrated with that other person. That's the gift of knowing all the different numbers and what motivates them to be able to meet them where they are when their behavior might be a little out of whack.
Yes. One of the other things I love about the Enneagram, one, I love the self-exploration it provided me. But secondly, I loved learning what other people's Enneagrams were. And I feel like it helped me relate to them in a better way, or understand their behavior, or not take it so personally. I do want to plug right here, Enneagram, identifying this really should be something that you should do, right? Quizzes are not necessarily going to be the most accurate. Asking somebody to tell you what they think your type is probably isn't going to be very accurate, because it's about internally your core motivations. And in theory, nobody's going to know that.
Totally.
But you. What are some potential books that you might recommend, Kate, for people to be able to explore that? So if you've just listened now and you're like, man, a 5 sounds like me, or a 9 sounds like me, how might you go deeper in a way that you think would be an authentic journey?
Book-wise, I think The Road Back to You. It's co-written by Ian Morgan Cron and Suzanne Stabile. And I think that's the most approachable intro to the Enneagram that you can have. Go through each of the numbers. They explain it in a way that's loving and careful and not judgy.
Yes.
So they have done their work, because again, if you struggle with someone in the Enneagram, that might come out in your teaching aspect of it. But I definitely would recommend The Road Back to You as the book. As far as podcasts go, since we're on a podcast, Typology is done by Ian Morgan Cron, and they do a good job. And then The Enneagram Journey is another one, and that's by Suzanne Stabile. Both those two, if you like the book aspect of it, then check out the podcast, because what is helpful is to hear other numbers talking about themselves. Because what I say is each number, maybe it's a different color, but everyone shows up in different shades. You might hear someone talking about a 4, being a 4 in a podcast, and Jill's like, oh, that's not me at all. Well, that might not be you, but there's parts that are showing up in different way, or that's a different shade.
Yes.
Listening to other numbers that you are thinking that you might be is going to be helpful.
Thank you for those. One thing I do like to disclaim about the Enneagram is that it is rooted in Christianity. Talk to me about that, because when I first started the road back to you, I read the foreword and it was very Jesus-y. And I remember, as somebody who carries my own religious baggage, I was like, WTF is this crazy book that Kate told me to read. But then I skipped to the foreword, and because you were literally like, Jill, just stop reading that and start reading the numbers. Get to chapter 1. So I do want to disclaim that for people, just so they're not surprised. Can you talk a little bit about that?
When you skipped it, was there Jesus-y stuff in the main part of the book?
Tinges of it, but nothing that felt to me.
It's interesting because I wouldn't say it was rooted in Christianity. Because there's some Christians out there who are like, that's New Age stuff, that's anti-Christianity. So you have people in both camps of what that looks like. The camp that I sit in is, I feel like there's deep wisdom in the Enneagram to learn about yourself and to bring yourself to wholeness in the healthiest place that you're supposed to be, and doing that of what God created us to be, rather than these parts that might carry hurt or shame or fear or anger. How do we navigate those in a healthier and holistic way? I would say Christianity has adopted it in some circles, but others haven't.
If you're looking more into it, there might be some crossover with Christianity, but there also might not be.
Right.
What else do we need to know about our numbers and our types?
Do you want to go through each of the numbers?
Yeah. Let's go a little deeper.
Okay. That's the thing. You can continue to go deeper and deeper. One of the things you guys were talking about was, I think I relate to 2. I relate to 3. Well, you might hear the thing called wings. So wings are the numbers that are right next to each other.
Okay.
So it's almost a flavor. So you have the core number, and then you have a flavor of the number next to it, and you can lean into that. And that's part of the integration wholeness, that you're able to take your core personality type and then extend it on to ones that are similar to you.
But you couldn't have a wing like a 4 with a 9 wing.
Correct.
Or a 1 wing.
Yeah. So
my wing choices are 3 and 5. If I'm a 4, I could go down to 3, up to 5.
Yes, absolutely.
So you can wing into a different core wound,
you
basically.
Can. Yes.
All right.
Yeah. Isn't that fun?
Good news.
Yes. Good news.
Good news. I have several core wounds.
You're like, great, shame and fear. That's what I was hoping for.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's just so interesting. So if you're interested, you can go as far and as deep as you want to about different things about the Enneagram. For each of the numbers, I'm going to share what numbers they move to in health and stress as a way to try to help you say, I do that when I'm healthy, or I do that when I'm stressed out, as a way to help maybe work towards identifying. But again, it takes a long time for you to come to where your number is and understand it and fully own it, in a sense. So just be gentle with yourself and patient with yourself as you're figuring it out. Type 1, sometimes it's called the perfectionist. I prefer the reformer because I feel like that is nicer. Our beloved Dr. Brene Brown identifies as a 1.
All right, Lady Brene.
1s are principled, they're responsible, they're improvement oriented. They can walk into any room and identify what exactly is wrong, what they would change about it. They're constantly having that ticking in their mind. And they're happy to tell you if you ask. And sometimes when you don't ask, which is where sometimes the struggle comes in. But their core motivation is to be good, to be ethical, and to be right. So their motto would be something like, I just want to do it right and make it better.
Yes.
Their core fear, because they don't want to be bad. They have to be good because they fear being bad, corrupt, or defective. That is what's driving them, is that fear and the core motivation. And when 1s are stressed, they move to 4s. They become moody, they become self-critical, and they withdraw like unhealthy 4s. But when they're in health, or when they're in heart, they become more spontaneous, they become joyful and open-minded like healthy 7s. So I love nothing more than a healthy 1.
Yes. And that's what I love about the Enneagram is some of these things, they can be used for good or for evil, right? For lack of a better words. The 1s carry a very nice skill set in relationships, at work.
Yeah. Or if they're talking about different things, they're more fun about it. They're lighthearted light about it and maybe not as rigid or harsh about how they come across. But ones are some of my favorite people in the world, and I want them on my team. The world needs more ones because they're going to make it a better place.
They're busy. Yes,
Yeah.
I like that.
They are busy. Type 2 is known as the helper. 2s are generous and they're people pleasing. And sometimes that can be their stumbling block because their core motivation is they want to be loved, to be needed, and to be wanted. Their motto is, if I take care of everyone else, then I'll be loved, which can be really hard. That's a hard place to be in because their core fear is being unloved and unwanted. They can step into any room and they can know the needs of every person even before they might know them.
Yeah.
And they are always trying to care for other people even when you don't want them to care for you. And that can be where the rub gets to be sometimes.
Yes.
For stress lines, 2s move to 8. They can become aggressive, they can become controlling and demanding. So when they have gone to the bad place of trying to be loved and wanted, they can come off as manipulative in their doing for other people. Yes. Amber, thank you. So one of the things about the Enneagram is when you're hearing the descriptions, it's important to be like, do I feel called out?
Yeah.
Yes. Do I feel called out?
Do I feel called out? Does this make me uncomfortable? Do I not want to be this number? Do I not like what I'm hearing? And that is where it is telling you to go deeper and explore that number a little bit more. And also having grace for yourself because there's so many gifts that the 2s bring us. Being able to be proactive, like caring for other people. They are such support, hype people, which I'm here for.
Well,
And
we need nurturers in this
100%.
world. So where do 2s go to when they're doing well?
They go to 4.
Ah.
Yeah, so they connect with their own feelings and develop emotional depth like healthy 4s. So they kind of are like, in a sense, withdrawing because they're like, oh, my value, my worth isn't tied up in other people. It's who I am uniquely created to be. And when they can lean into that and they can make their thoughts of, if I don't need to be needed by other people and I know I need myself, that's a beautiful thing. Like 4s are at their healthiest. 2s go to 4 when they're at their healthiest.
Interesting. I have a lot of 2s in my life. It sounds like Amber is a 2 in my life. But when I think about 2s, sometimes for them, I want to be like, think about yourself for a minute. That would make us all feel better, right? If you could be less worried about everybody else and a little bit more worried about you.
My mind is blown. Mine is blown.
You were also thinking maybe you were a 3. So let's do
Okay, 3s is the achiever. So the achievers are dependable, they're driven, and they're image conscious. Their core motivation is to be successful and valuable and admired. And what's running through their head is, if I'm successful, I'll be worthy. One of my favorite Enneagram teachers described it this way. She's a 3. I just feel like in me is just swirling nothingness. And I just feel so empty. And the way to not feel that anymore is to be successful, to achieve,
To try to
do
fill it up.
something, to fill it up in that way. What she says too is that idea of when I walk into a room and I interact with people, I want people to remember me. I don't want them to necessarily admire me, but I want to be remembered because their core fear is being worthless or failing. So some of the things with the 3 is they are very adaptable. So they will go into situations and they might change their tactic. They might change their tone. They might change the way how they're interacting with people to fit the needs of other people as a way to feel connected to them. These are people, again, high achieving. You see in professions that require a lot of education, require a lot of hard work, all these different things. The 3s, again, are a gift because they are driven. They will succeed no matter the cost sometimes.
And for me, when you talk about the 3, I say, yes, that resonates. But I know when you're about to talk about the 4, I'm going to feel like squirmy and weird and seen the same way that you felt about the 2.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if that's a way to think about, because there are many pieces of me that I'm, yep, I do all those things. I can walk into a room and think about how do I need to present to engage these people. I am very good at accomplishing a task. I do care a lot about what other people think about me. right? And I want to be able to portray myself as someone who is successful, who has it all together. Those things are important to me, but it's not kicking me in the gut like I know that it will during this next one.
Well, and that's what I was thinking too. Yes, identify there, but not as much as a 2. That's not where my core motivation is coming from. I do those things, and there's pieces of that, but the 2 is it.
It sounds like you are kind of making the difference between behavior and a motivation, which is what the Enneagram is all about. You know what I mean? Of like, I might behave this way, but again, numbers might do the same thing, but the reason, the underlying why is totally different. And that's what you're getting to. But that requires a lot of introspection and reflection to get there.
Right.
Going back with the 3s, their stress line moves to 9. Under stress, they might become disengaged, they might be complacent, or avoidant. They might kind of take their foot off the gas pedal a little bit. Instead of going 60, they're like, okay, I'm going to slow down a little bit, or I'm going to avoid. Or if they're like, I know someone's upset with me, I'm going to avoid them rather than trying to manage or work it in my favor. But instead, I'm going to avoid. And then their growth line goes to 6. And so they become more cooperative, they become loyal, and they become authentic. Because sometimes with the 3s, they can just be out for themselves. But when they are in health, it's for the good of the whole. You know what I mean? And cooperative. And they're like, I want to work with other people, with the team aspect of it. It's not a one-person show. It's we're all doing this together. When they can lean into that, it's amazing. And it's a gift. Because usually they're the leaders of the team. But they're wanting everyone to work with them.
It's the difference of I'm the leader, look at what I've done, as opposed to like, let me bring everybody along with me.
100%.
Nice.
Yes. The 4s, they are known as the individualist or the romantic. They are creative and they're sensitive and they're introspective. Their core motivation is to be unique, authentic, and significant. Thinking through, I'm only giving people who have identified as that number, and Glennon Doyle would be a 4. And so what is going on through their head usually is, I want to be seen for who I truly am. With my highest highs and my lowest lows. I want you to see me. I don't want you to look away. I want you to be in it with me, is kind of what they're thinking. Because their core fear is that idea of being insignificant, emotionally cut off, or without some kind of identity. What are you thinking and feeling, Jill?
That just sounds like me. We're just being totally honest. I love being successful. Who doesn't love an award? Who doesn't love recognition? But what I need is to be special. That sounds sad, but it's true. That's what I want to be. Oh, wow, Jill did this, but in a unique, cool, and creative way.
Not like anybody else.
Exactly.
No one else has ever done this, or no one else has ever thought this, or
truly,
done this.
Yes. It's that slightly different thing, because I used to think I was a 3, and it's 3s I know fear failure a lot. Failure doesn't put that big of a hitch in my giddy up. It really doesn't. Like, nobody likes to be like, oh, shit. But it's the being alone, being isolated, being disconnected that really, really freaks me out.
Yeah, I mean, the 4s are not afraid of failure because they're willing to sit in it and learn from it and just be there and maybe wallow for a time. And sometimes for them, the next thing is, okay, you've wallowed.
We do love to wallow.
Are you ready to move on yet? No? Okay, well, I'll be here with you. That is what they're wanting from their people.
Yes.
Right? Is for them to meet them exactly where they are and not try to change them. If you try to change a 4... that doesn't go super well.
Yeah, probably not. And I do love a wallow.
But also the highest highs, right? When you're so excited, you are just elated and everyone join in with the joy, join in with the excitement. There's not a lot of in between sometimes.
Yeah.
You have a hard time with that middle path.
I hate a middle path.
Yes.
Not interested in all of that.
The 4s, they move to the 2s. So what you might have noticed is 2s move to 4 in health and 4s move to 2 in unhealth. So that is the opposite, which is interesting. When 4s go to 2 under stress, they can become overly dependent or clingy like unhealthy 2s. Just really needing of other people, because 2s, when they're unhealthy, they're like, I really need you. I want you to notice what I've done for you, and I want you to respond in kind. That idea of just needing that from other people, that emotional labor from other people. And then the growth line moves to 1s. They become more grounded, they become disciplined and principled. Is there any ways you want to speak to that?
That makes a lot of sense. The going to 2 in unhealth makes a lot of sense around, I can sometimes be a little bit manipulative, that over concern about what others are thinking about you or how they're responding to you, getting resentful if people aren't appreciative. My whole life thinking about the ones, I've always said I've always wanted to be one of those. Did you guys ever have those girls in grade school that their desk was always clean and they always had all their crayons at the end of the year? They always had a pen and a pencil and they were organized and they just had their shit together, you know? That's a one.
Yeah.
Those little girls were ones. And I always wanted to be like them, right? But I'm always just a little bit messy. I never have the right pen when I need it. I forget what I needed at home because I think my mind was just elsewhere. Other things were priorities. So yes, thinking about moving towards a place that is a bit more grounded, that just moves a little bit slower, that is a bit more disciplined, makes a lot of sense.
The middle path.
The middle path.
You are in the middle path when you move to one.
Exactly.
You're like, wow, everything is going to be okay.
Right, and those types of little girls, they didn't have the high highs and the low lows. They're just even fucking Steven every day.
Exactly.
And never in my life have I been able to get there.
All right, so move into the thinking or the fear-based triads with the 5 starting us first. And 5s are the investigator. They are very analytical, they're private, and they're very insightful. They're the people that will not tell you an answer unless they know it to be true or they've done the research. They also have usually the least amount of energy. One of my favorite stories that I've heard about 5s is they were supervising someone. I think that person was a 2. And finally, they just had to say, listen, I only have so much energy. And that's really for my family and for my kids and job. I can't care a lot about what's going on with you right now. But again, that takes a vulnerability for them to name that. You know what I mean? Just to say, I don't do well with small talk is really what they were saying.
Right. It's just too much for me.
It's too much. It's too much. Because their core motivation is to be capable, to be competent, and to be self-sufficient. So they're not needing other people to do that to have that small talk. They will not ask for a lot of help all the time because they are figured it out on their own. Their core fear is being helpless, overwhelmed, or invaded.
So there's some preparation to try to avoid that.
Yeah, their idea is if I know enough, I'll be safe. Very analytical, very researched. These are the people who love school. These are the people who love thinking about a topic and they will go deep in digging into it. Things that they're not interested in, they won't do it. But things that they love to hear about, they will. When they're under stress, they move to 7. That makes them more scattered. It makes them hyperactive or indulgent, like an unhealthy 7. So it almost swings the total opposite for them. So when they just don't care anymore, I'm just going to do whatever, you're like, oh, that 5 is not feeling great.
Sound the alarm bell. Yes,
Exactly.
Things are not going well.
And their growth line, they move to 8. And so they become assertive, they become energetic, and they are confident, like a healthy 8. 5s, when they are in health, it's great because they have the knowledge and they have the confidence to move forward about different things, which is always great to be able to put those two together.
This is probably the wrong time to ask this. Are there certain genders that tend to lean towards different numbers, or do we see like a pretty even percentage among numbers? Are more women helpers? Are more women 2s? And the 5, when I was thinking about people in my life that I feel like fit that 5 type, they were all men.
Yes.
So I'm curious about that.
I do think you definitely see that. I think some people are mistyped as 2 because they're women though.
Oh, for sure.
So I just want to name that. Or they have that role of they're a mother and they don't work outside the home, they work inside the home. And so that idea of, oh, you must be a 2 then. Well, no, that's
right.
Not true.
Like you said, just because this is what I'm doing every day doesn't mean this is my motivation.
Exactly. So I feel like I am careful to say men and women, especially with some of the gender fluidity aspect that's going on too. What does that look like? But I think there's some numbers that are harder to be that number as a male or female or even gender fluid. 2s, if there's a man that's a 2, I think there could be a lot of people who are like almost annoyed with that.
Because it's butting up against our societal norms and expectations.
Right. There's a lot of women that are usually pushed or shoved into thinking they're 2s or 9s, which we haven't gotten to yet. I would agree that there are a lot of males that might identify a 5 or people think it is. But one of my closest friends is a 5 and she's a female. There's researchers out there that want to come with all that information, and so they might be the quieter people. All right. And then the loyalists, they're 6 and they are committed, they are responsible, and they're anxious. They are probably the most anxious on the Enneagram, and they have a lot of fear. I've heard that the United States has a lot of 6s. So they talk about there's this news story of something that's happening or something that's going to go wrong, and the 6s will all spring into action and try to do the opposite thing or prepare for that, because their core motivation is to feel safe, supported, and secure at all times. They always want that weighted blanket feeling and feeling grounded in that sense. Their thought is, if I stay alert, I'll be protected. So again, they're always scanning, they're always strategizing, but just in a different way than 5s. With doing bookish for 5s, 6 are practical.
Yeah.
Real world.
5s are withdrawing almost in their anxiety, whereas 6s are scuttling about, hypervigilant.
100%. What's unique about the 6 is that they go on a spectrum of phobic to fear or counterphobic to fear or authority. They used to think it was 2 different types, but now they say, no, it's just based on the reaction that you currently have.
Interesting.
So you're along that spectrum. So some 6s they'll look like when they are butted up against authority or something that's not good, is they will go toe-to-toe with that. And that's the counterphobic. They're like, oh no, you're not taking me down. And then there's the phobic where you're like, okay.
More submissive
And try to avoid. Again, the 6s can do different things at that time. It's just, what do they feel the most safe in doing it? And what will make them feel the most secure afterwards? Their fear is being without support, guidance, or in danger, which is just a really hard place to think about.
That's an anxious place to live. Yeah.
But what I'll say with the 6s is they are some of the most loyal people, because they know that once you're in their circle, you have put in a lot of work to be in their circle, and they will be loyal to you because you've proven that you can be trustworthy. You've proven that you can be secure. You want 6s as friends because they will be with you until the very end. And they will be supportive and responsible and committed to the relationship, to the cause. That's the gift that they bring with their number. And their stress, so they move to 3, then they become image conscious, they become competitive and a workaholic. Because again, they think if I will work hard enough, then I will get out of the danger. I don't have to give in to the fear. It's a phobic idea of when you're image driven, thinking through that of like, oh, I have to be conscious about that, so I want to bow down to whatever will get me out of this, or what will make me...
Exactly. Well, you're trying to build up some safeguards, 100%. Essentially.
But when they're in growth, they go to 9, they become more calm, they become more trusting, and they become grounded. Not a lot can really push them off their center when they are in health, and they were like, it's going to be okay. Everything's going to be fine. I can see all the sides to what's happening, and I can make a good choice, not an anxious choice.
Yep. I feel like I know a couple 6s.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you said, and we think maybe there are more 6s than other numbers.
I can see the 6's behavior. Again, the motivation, like a lot on social media. When things are happening, of sharing their fear, sharing their anxiety, or their commitment to a cause or a person.
Well, the loyalist,
because they think it's going to make them safe. We see that playing out a lot during election season.
Like the 6s are busy.
The 6s are busy, yes.
They got a lot to happen.
They have a lot to share, and they want other people to know that they need to support their candidate because they will make the best decision to make things better, or so they think.
And I feel like we all do that to an extent, right? Where we try to control the uncontrollable. But 6s, they're trying to fortify against danger.
Absolutely.
And they could do that, like you said, through working and trying to stack up money, through allegiance to where they think the power lies, right? All of that kind of stuff.
So the 7s are the enthusiast, and they have a lot of energy. Lots of energy. They're fun-loving, they're spontaneous, and they are scattered. They are the ones who always have FOMO. You know, they do not want to miss out on anything. They might be on a trip and they're already planning the next trip because they do not want to just feel, because their fear is being deprived or trapped in emotional pain or limited in any way.
So it's like they're like, the fun cannot stop.
Yes, the fun cannot stop. If it stops, then I'm worried of what I'm left with. As one of my favorite bands say, will I ever know silence without mental violence? And that's what I feel like the 7s are always running away from. They're like, I don't want to be left with my thoughts. I don't want to be left with bad feelings, that kind of stuff. Because their core motivation is to be happy, to be satisfied, and to be free. So they're the ones who might be tentative with plans. Because what if something better comes along? Then I have to do that. I don't want to commit to that because they think is if I stay excited, I won't feel trapped or sad. So 7s really struggle with crucial, hard conversations because they don't want to think badly about themselves or an experience, because they always want to think of the best case scenario or put a positive spin on it.
So where the 4s like love a deep and dark, hard, sad conversation,
Yeah.
the 7s are like, I'm going to pretend like that type of vibe doesn't even exist.
100%.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. They are usually unwilling to have those conversations, which can make it really hard.
I know some 7s.
I feel like I display a lot of 7-ish characteristics as well.
Do the 2s go to 7? No.
The 2s don't go to 7.
Okay. I was wondering if that was it. Okay.
Again, you want to have different things about different numbers. There's things about the healthier side of each number that you kind of really want to pull from, but then you might also again be like, oh, some of the unhealthy things I pull from as well. But what the motivation is. Because their motivation is they don't want to be trapped in emotional pain. They don't want to feel limited.
I don't think being trapped in emotional pain is a fear I have. Because I can pull myself out of that. But I do plan trips while I'm on trips.
Oh yeah, same.
And I want the party to continue.
Amber does like the party to never stop.
Yeah. But that's a 2 thing as well, right? Because that's caring for other people.
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean? So if you think, oh, I have that behavior, but it's not because of, I don't want to feel trapped. I don't want to feel
and I don't
limited.
have any fear of missing out at all.
Yeah.
None.
Yeah.
I just want to create my own party to have.
I love to miss out.
I love my own party by myself
Yes.
with a small group.
Yeah. But they are a gift to everybody because they are definitely the high energy. They, again, are the hype people too. Just they do it in a different way than 2s. But they are like the fun life of the party, never wanting it to end.
I have heard in my Enneagram studies that certain numbers are prone to certain things. And I've heard that 7s sometimes struggle with addiction or addictive behaviors.
100%.
1, because it's fun. We don't want the party to end. And 2, because it's a way to not feel the hard feelings. Right? And then I've also heard that about 4s because it's a way to perpetuate the hard feelings, the loathing, the all of that kind of stuff. So
yeah. The 7's work is being willing to be similar to a 4, being able to sit with the discomfort. Right? Every number has something that they need to be working on. You know what I mean? To help get them outside of that room and not feel like it's a prison or they're locked in it. Of what is that wounded message that they receive that they can heal. The Challenger, which is my number.
yay!
And I will say, we were talking earlier about the different numbers and male or female or gender fluid and non-binary, but it's one of those things where they say it's hard to be a female 8.
Okay.
Because a lot of people love or respect the male 8s, but the female 8s sometimes get a bad rap. Because they are assertive.
Nobody likes an assertive woman.
No.
So
yes.
Ew, gross.
Yes. Yeah. They're protective and they're decisive. Usually pretty confident, will come off in a room. They talk about an 8 will enter a room and people will notice. 3s will enter a room and other people will notice too. But again, it's just different ways. They carry a lot of energy because their motivation is they want to be strong, they want to be in control, and they want to be self-reliant.
Oh, an 8 loves control.
They love control, but I want to name, they don't want to control others. That's not what they're trying to do. Sometimes it comes across that way or what they do, but because their fear is not to be controlled by others. They don't want you to control them. If they are feeling weak or feeling vulnerable, they're not in a good place. The idea that they're saying is, if I stay strong, I won't be betrayed. And I would say that's one of a really intense, you're afraid of being betrayed. They're definitely nervous about being betrayed and they try to avoid it from other people. So it takes a lot for them to let other people in, to even be vulnerable. I remember in talking to an Enneagram person, the reason why she's like, oh no, you're a total 8 is because she was like, have you heard of Brene Brown? I said, oh my gosh, yes, Brene Brown, I love her. The courage thing, it's such a great thing. I just don't really like the vulnerability. I can really do without the vulnerability part.
You're like, I am brave. I will bust down these walls.
Rising strong, I am here for, but vulnerability, that's hard. So that has been my work, is learning to be vulnerable, to allow myself to open up to, maybe not everybody, because that's not smart, but to the people that I trust. And what is that part to be able to be vulnerable and be open to other people? Their stress line, when 8s are stressed, they move to 5s. And they become secretive, they become withdrawn, and they become emotionally detached. That was really helpful in figuring out my number of, I absolutely do that when I am not in a good place. People will not hear from me. I will do all the research. That's one of my supervisors said one times is like, no, you're very calculated when you share. You have the facts to back it up and the receipts. And that's the 5 in me. If I feel like I'm going to a stress, if I'm going to a difficult conversation, I will have everything to back up with me to do that. Which again, that's why sometimes stress can be a gift going to a different number, because you pick up something else that you don't already have. And each person needs to kind of figure that out for themselves. Yes. But I know in my work, in some aspects, that is a gift for me because I'm withdrawing and you're not hearing what I actually want to say.
The way I think maybe more stereotypically about 5s and 8s is those are the two polar opposites, at least when I think about presentation. And so the fact that 8s go to 5.
Yeah.
But it makes a lot of sense because I have a lot of 8s in my life too. That makes a lot of sense.
And 5s go to 8 in health. So that's understanding the line aspect of it. It's another layer to go deeper in understanding it. I feel like it almost goes to the opposite here too. When 8s are in health, they move to 2.
Wow. That does feel opposite-y.
Yes, because they become more open-hearted, they become caring, and they become collaborative, like healthy 2s. They start to begin to care about other people. I mean, not that 8s don't care. They care very, very deeply. But sometimes they will bulldoze.
Whereas the 2, it's a more chill, it's a more vulnerable, it's a more kind of serving kind of energy.
Or their idea of, I'm going to do this whether people like it or not. That's an 8. When they go to health with the 2, they're getting other people on board with it and they're taking stock in what other people are thinking and feeling and making decisions based on that. 8s are very justice-minded, fair-minded, and they can come off with a really hard exterior, but they're really mushy underneath. When you get down to it, because sometimes they care too much. If they cared less, their life would be easier.
I can definitely see where they hold some of the qualities, like you said, that we might really respect in men, but be like, man, this girl's too much kind of deal. It's just so interesting how these like interplay with society and societal expectation around gender and roles and things like that.
Absolutely. And the last one, the 9. And the 9 sits at the top of the diagram, looking down at all the numbers. So the 9s are known as the peacemakers. Okay. So they're easygoing, they're supportive, they're conflict avoidant, and they can see the side to every story. Someone can come and share an argument or different points and they'd be like, oh yeah, no, I totally see that. And then someone else giving the exact opposite and they're like, oh no, I can totally see. That's one of the gifts that they bring, is that they're able to be with every person and say, oh, I see where you're coming from, or I get that aspect of it. And part of that is because they want to keep the peace. Sometimes there's an idea between peacemakers and peacekeepers. So the peacekeeper can be usually more assertive. I'm going to keep this peace no matter what. I'm going to keep the peace versus the peacemakers of trying to get people to work together and see the different sides. And so I think you get that in the 9s of whether they're going to be more aggressive or assertive about their peacemaking, or are they going to be peacekeeping? Their core motivation is to have peace, to have harmony, and to have stability. And their idea is if everything stays peaceful, then I'll be okay. We'll be okay. But what I will say is they usually are the people who will say if something not great happens, they'll be like, it'll be okay. Everything will work out.
So there's almost like some minimizing there.
Yes.
Okay.
Some minimizing that will happen because they will sometimes shift into what another person is doing and what they want to do, even if they don't want to do it. But they would think they want to do it because that's what you want to do. And they want to do what you want to do.
And there's so much repression going on there.
Yes.
That it's not even like, oh, I'm just pretend, because it's not manipulative.
No,
it's repressed.
It's repressed.
I can think of bosses that I've had that have been like that has driven me crazy, because if you tell me one thing and then you turn around and tell this other person something else, and next thing I know, you're do what you feel like.
Right.
It's like, hello, you're the boss.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Absolutely.
But it's like they're not doing it to mess with people. Yeah, they're truly just trying to keep it chill.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, they're very conflict avoidant. Even things that you might not see as a conflict, they see as a deep conflict. And they're very scared. So them coming to you about an issue, that takes a lot of confidence and a lot of work for them to come to you about something.
So it must really be a problem.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes I felt where 9s will hold in, not say anything, and then want to cut the person off because they're like, I can't even go to this person about this issue because I don't even want to have this conversation. So instead, I'm just going to distance myself from this person.
I'm out.
9s move to 6 under stress. they become anxious, they become reactive and suspicious, like unhealthy aids. That is, it's a hard place to be. The gift, I think, for them is that idea of they're thinking about other people, not just what face value that they're telling them. That suspicion might actually be a good thing for them at times towards other people, rather than, oh, I'm just going to believe everything you say, or I'm going to meld into you.
Well, and there's some more assertiveness that comes out too.
Absolutely. And then their growth line is to 3, and they become energized, they become motivated, and they become confident. So when 9s, when they are willing to be in conflict, they can bring some confidence to it, and then they won't feel like they're railroaded over, and they'll have more energy. Those are the 9 numbers, the quick and dirty of the numbers.
Yes.
There's a lot more you can say about each of them, but that's a little flavor profile for each of them.
That was so great, Kate. I am a big Enneagram girly. I love the Enneagram, but I also love conversations like this because I feel like I learn something new every single time.
Yes.
And I think for so long in my journey, I was really, what is each number? But it's so helpful to hear about where they go in stress and in health. I think that is one that to me has felt like another added layer from this conversation. This is what I propose we do. I think we should pause it here. We should have Amber pull a card for us because I feel like our charge from this is to think about our number, think about ourselves, and then I would love for us next time to engage in a conversation about the knowledge, the insight that we now have, how it's impacted our journey. And I'm really curious to hear that from you, Kate. I want to unpack a little bit more about some of the numbers and how they show up in relationships and things like that too. In a space of reflection on our numbers,
we are going to pull a soul coaching oracle card. As we do, let's take a deep breath together and release. And we'll set the intention that you'll receive exactly what you need from this card pull and from this podcast today. And hopefully you are starting to think about where you sit on the Enneagram and what your motivations are and places that you want to learn more. We got the card of truth. I think that as we're talking about Enneagrams here and learning more about the different numbers and where we may lie on those and understanding other people, right? We are starting to find some truth in who we are, what our core motivations are, and what might be motivating other people too. Because what I loved about this conversation was it requires you to do some inner work and have some reflection about what motivates you and not just the behaviors you're doing outwardly that other people are telling you you're doing. So you're having to do that and find your own truth. But as you're doing that piece, you're also looking around you and seeing that everyone else has their own truth too, right? And so what I might be judging someone on or deciding is their personality type really has a deeper meaning that only really they know. And if I want to know that, I've got to be in better relation with them. I've got to dig a little deeper instead of looking surface level and find that truth in relationship with other people and within myself.
So true. All right, guys, we'll come back at you next time with more Enneagram stuff.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Guided by Third Wheel, the podcast. We would be honored if you would like, rate, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, be well.